Hello and welcome to Longship Gaming. Today we are going to be talking about Twin Suns, the Star Wars Unlimited multiplayer format. One of the three pillars of the game between limited, constructed, and multiplayer. This is just a quick intro to the format, going over what is Twin Suns, how do you play it in a broad stroke sort of way. If you are an EDH commander player from Magic, would you like this format? Would you like this particular game? Possible deck archetypes you can play, leader and base considerations, deck building considerations, a preliminary Twin Suns staples card list. That's going to be a living document. The kind of cards you're always going to want to be playing in decks in different aspects. And some sample decks, either ones that I've been very successful with already or ones that have been successful against me. So, we're going to go through a lot of material, so let's get started. So what is Twin Suns? This is going to be very sort of broad strokes. It is a 4-player, publisher-supported variant of Star Wars Unlimited. Each player has 2 leaders and a base, and a deck minimum of 80 cards. So that 80 card change just occurred with the release of set 4, Jump to Lightspeed. Only 1 copy of each card is allowed in the deck, unless card rules state otherwise. This will be very familiar to anybody who plays the Commander format for Magic. It is a singleton format. While you can play any aspect in your deck, it's best to stick to the colors of your leaders and base. So, as is the same with any other format for Star Wars Unlimited, if you're playing an aspect or one of the colors that's outside of the ones that you can play, then you're basically playing a 2 resource tax on playing that card. Players take an action on their turn, playing events, units or upgrades, and attacking with units, etc. So it's the same 1 action per player turn, goes clockwise. There's not a lot of cards in this set that can really kind of combo off. There are some. But unlike, say, Magic the Gathering for the Commander format, you're not going to be playing multiple cards per turn. This is 1 card at a time, generally, or 1 action at a time, I should say, until it passes on to the next player. So you win if at the end of the game your base has the most hit points remaining. So unlike Commander, for example, it doesn't necessarily quote unquote drag on. If everyone isn't all eliminated at once, it just doesn't come down to 2 players, then slowly whittling down to 1 player who's successful. When a player is defeated, base health, and basically someone's base health is at 0, the players have 1 last endgame action phase in which if they have the resources to play cards, they can play out those cards and take actions until they just can't do anything else. The player that knocked them out gets 5 hit points back on their base, so it's good actually to take out an opponent. And games can be fast and furious, rarely going beyond turn 7 or 8, so far in my experience. But, as I'll get to later on when I have some other channel recommendations where you can watch this sort of gameplay, or get more in-depth, an in-depth tutorial on the playing of the game, I'll include those, of course, in the description below. I'm starting to see games, since I've written this actually, that are going longer as I think people become much more comfortable with the format and what kind of cards they actually want to put in their decks. So, if you're coming to this video having played Commander or Elder Dragon Highlander for Magic, will you like this game? Well, first of all, do you like the Star Wars universe? do you like the characters? Do you like the ships? Do you like the stories? I mean, that's really the big thing. It's really all about the flavor. If you are a competitive Commander player, this is not yet a competitive format. Again, there are maybe about 1,000 cards between the 4 sets so far. So, I mean, there's a lot of choice already how to build your decks, but I mean, it's going to grow as we go along. but I can't see it yet being supported, and Fantasy Flight has not indicated it'll be a competitive format, but I can certainly see at some point in the future maybe some fan version of it that develops a competitive version of Twin Suns. This game does have the same politicking as it does in EDH, especially when you get nearer to the end game, when people aren't just playing out cards and are taking actions. When you get down to usually the 7 or 8 resource turn, there's a lot going on in the game. People's base health was dwindling, and now you're trying to figure out how to maintain your health while knocking down the person who has the most. But will that disadvantage you? What kind of deals you can make? And of course, when it goes into endgame too, politicking is important. Getting someone to take game actions against another player and not yourself is incredibly important, and setting yourself up for the win. Games do tend to be faster than Commander, and I'm talking here casual Commander. I know that competitive rank 4 or 5 decks, let's say, of Commander can be over very, very quickly when the combos go off. As of yet, there really is no way to do that in Star Wars Unlimited within Twin Suns. So as I said, because you're only taking generally one action at a time on your turns, it goes around the table pretty quickly. It does slow down a bit in endgame when people are really thinking through their turns, but generally, as I've seen so far, the 7 or 8 or maybe ninth round, it is a pretty fast game comparatively. You can get through one in about half an hour to 45 minutes. But as I said, the caveat is more cards are added to the pool. People become more used to what cards are available. Games may actually start to take longer. That's my suspicion. There's a growing variety of leaders. So unlike in Commander, you're going to have, there are hundreds and hundreds of potential commanders in Magic by this point after its 30-year history. There are, as of Jump to Lightspeed, there are 72 different leaders. Different in terms of mechanically. There are some that have repeated, so there's like a couple of Throns and a couple of Bobas and a couple of two Hans? 3 Hans, maybe at this point. Combining those two together with a different aspect of a base, you have a lot of variety to work with already, even after only 4 sets. And what I've discovered is that you can have very fun and effective decks that cost very little, effectively can cost nothing. I'll get to that point when I show off one of the decks that was put together. And what I mean by costing very little, if you were to go to jump into this game, go to a night for Constructed or Limited, and say that you're new there, almost everybody who's been in this from the start is going to have a ton of extra commons and uncommons just to give away. I know I'm trying to unload a lot of mine. I've been able to unload a lot, but I want to unload more. So I just don't want them to not go to use. So let me know in the comments if you want some commons and uncommons and bundles of leaders and stuff, because I will be more than happy to send them your way. So the one thing that we don't have in Twin Suns so far is what you call like a standard language. Again, it's very new. Game's only a little over a year old, and Jump to Lightspeed has only sort of matured. Twin Suns is sort of just starting to mature with Jump to Lightspeed. I had a look through like Commander deck archetypes, and maybe it's time to start thinking about what kind of language to put around deck archetypes in Twin Suns. So this is just a sampling. By no means, is this in any way official. These are just my thoughts, right? So I've compared existing archetypes in Magic that can or may carry over in some way and renamed them in a way that's more appropriate to Twin Suns, to Star Wars Unlimited. So, just going down the list here. So, Battlecruiser is one of the Magic archetypes, basically ramping up and playing up big units. There is ramp in Star Wars Unlimited. Not a lot, but there is ramp. Certainly not the amount that there is in Commander. But I thought maybe naming this sort of way of playing Capital Ship instead of Battlecruiser as an archetype. Bamboozle, since that card exists, it's notorious for having not the greatest art. I should put the art up here. Maybe I'll put it somewhere here in the video to show you what I mean. It's got notoriously bad art. However, it is similar to Stacks and Control to slow or stop your opponents from sticking units. There are plenty of bounce cards in Star Wars Unlimited that you can do this with. And Bamboozle, I think, is probably a good name for this style of deck. So Pillow Fort, I think, translates in this game to Sentinel. So there are lots and lots and lots of Sentinel cards in the set in Star Wars Unlimited. Pardon me. So basically it's slowing down your opponent's ability to basically hurt your base whatsoever by playing a lot of Sentinels. And there are, again, there are more in some colors than others. Blue in Vigilance has tons of Sentinels. Command has some more. So if you just stacked up on those units, it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to actually do any damage to your base. So putting up Sentinels and using cards that have shields, or better yet, both, is definitely the way to go if you want to play that kind of deck. So I'm proposing Sentinel as a rename because it's a mechanic in the game as opposed to Pillow Fort. Group Slug, that's one in Commander where you're basically doing damage to everybody all the time equally. I think it could be named Bloodsport in this game. Basically, there is a Bloodsport card that does damage to all units in play. There are plenty of cards out there like War Juggernaut now. Tons of cards that do indirect damage or do damage to every unit on the board relatively indiscriminately. It's a bit chaotic. I don't know whether or not it's a viable version or a viable way of playing the game yet, but just damaging everybody constantly, maybe combined with some kind of aggression, very like aggro shell, is the way to go. Just constantly be attacking, get your opponents down as quickly as possible or as low as possible, making them vulnerable, but leaving your stuff not quite as vulnerable. So damage for everyone. Factional, which is basically a version of like tribal decks. There are a lot of factions in this game: Imperial, Resistance, Underworlds, etc., that have a lot of synergies. There are a few what would be called in Magic Lords, where you're giving +1/+1 or more to characters of or units of a certain type, and there are a lot. And they're just going to become more. So as each set comes out, at least in the first year, they were, devoted. Like one set was to the original trilogy, and then the next one expanded that a bit more into Underworld. The third one expanded it to the Clone Wars. So you had Separatists and so on. Now that we're into the second year of the game, each set is sort of spreading those sort of tribal cards around more. So with each set, more tribals come out, and of course they're extremely thematic, right? As you'll see in one of the decks, actually two of the decks that I'll showcase later in the video. Swarm, so that would be tokens combined in a way with Weenie, flood the board with low resource units and tokens. There are lots of tokens down in the game between battle droids, clone troopers, X-Wings, and TIE fighters. There are lots of low resource cost cards, but you would have to back that up with a lot of card draw, or else you're going to run out of stuff from your hand pretty quickly. I don't know how viable this one is. People aren't, because there's not a lot of board wipes in Star Wars Unlimited. It's still right now, I think, sort of viable. You just have to be really concentrate on your game plan, just picking away at your opponents all the time, because you don't really have any big knockout blow. So, and your stuff, however, because they're not high value, won't really be taken off the board that quickly. So, it'll be interesting to see whether or not this is a potential archetype going forward. But I think Swarm is a good term for combining tokens in weenie gameplay. Counters, one of my favorites from Commander. I have one of my favorite sort of like put counters on things, make small things grow big, Abzan decks. Translates pretty well over to Star Wars Unlimited with the experience mechanic of putting +1/+1 counters on other cards in your deck. There are lots of cards that give experience to other cards or other units. So make small units large and big units even bigger. So in the sample decks that I put together, one of them sort of combines two archetypes and was pretty successful, I found. So one of the things for Twin Suns, of course, is your leaders and bases. It forms the absolute backbone of your deck because in the most basic of terms, you have access to 4 aspects. So up to 4. So one on your, like 2 on your leader and 3 aspects. Although I will say there is a potential, oh no, I'm right, it's 4. I can't count today. There are, of course, leaders that break that mold, and you can make even stranger decks than that. So leaders like Nalisay, who allows you to play any clone card, doesn't matter what aspect it is, or Harrison Dula, which allows you to play without paying the resource tax any Spectre unit of any color in your deck. In general, you're looking at 4 aspects, right? So either heroic or villainy, and in 3 other colors amongst, cunning, vigilance, aggression, and command. There are a lot of leaders, and when you're considering putting a deck together, think about the complementary leader abilities and aspects. I mean, you can do anything you want, really. You can combine them in any wackadoodle way that you feel like doing. I've tried some, didn't work out. That what I thought actually were synergistic didn't turn out to be very synergistic at all. But the fact is that we're so early in this format that experimentation is a lot of the fun in a game like this. There's nothing codified. You don't have your every deck has to have a Solemn Simulacrum or Arcane Signet or Sol Ring. The sort of like the absolute staples like you do in with Magic. In this game, there's it's such early days. You have a lot of interesting experimentation to do. So overall, there's over 1,200 leader combinations at this point, and they are just going to grow. And now we're going to have even more rare bases that open up more possibilities. So there are rare bases in the game which have abilities. The next set that's coming out, so Legends of the Force, have basic cards that enable Force units to do different things. So it's going to completely upend the considerations of how you play this game with every set that comes out. So it's going to be interesting. So here's some examples of ones that I think make for fun combinations, but are fairly straightforward. So are you a fan of Mandalorians? Well, or the Mandalorian TV show? You can make a very viable deck out of the Mandalorian, Bo-Katan, although the base there is Sundari. That's just for flavor, really, to be able to play a something from Mandalore. There are plenty of units in the game or supporting cards that are themed around playing Mandalorians. I think it's probably one of the stronger on-theme ones, and there will always be more going forward. And they're not the only leaders either. They're just the ones that matched up in Heroic. If you want to play Separatists, you have Count Dooku and Wat Tambor. They work together when they're basically using the exploit ability from set 3. So the synergy here is you play a Separatist card with exploit. There's going to be a lot of exploit cards in there. You're killing off, or basically in commander terms or magic terms, you're sacrificing token creatures. And Wat Tambor allows you to, if a friendly unit was defeated, give another unit +2/+2. So they synergize very well together. And the base here I chose for them was Petronaki Arena. So each layer you control gets +1, basically +1 power to be able to do more damage. It is lower health, it's 26 as opposed to 30. So you got to be careful with it, but I think that's an interesting possibility. And that one, you're only playing 2 colors, so you better hope that you have some pretty good double green cards or double command cards in your deck. And then I have this one down here. It's IG-88 and Moff Gideon. You know, not really in the same realm per se, or working together. But they both synergize okay because IG-88 wants to flood the board with small, with lots of, so he'd be a good example of playing a token or weenie deck. So attack with a unit, if you control more units than the defending player, the attacker gets +1 for this attack. And Moff Gideon, attack with a unit costs 3 less. If it's attacking a unit, it gets +1 for this attack. So they sort of synergize together when you have a lot of stuff out on the board. And they themselves actually come out fairly early on resource turn 5. When you have 5 resources, so turn 4. And so the rare base I gave them here was the relatively recent 35 health Colossus. Draw 1 less card from your starting hand. So that's the kind of deck where you want to have some cards that allow you to draw more cards that you're going to burn out pretty fast, to say the least. So in thinking about Twin Suns and how to build your decks, I think there are some things that have already been revealed in terms of how you need to build your 80 cards. So I'm going to refer back to Commander again and say, you know, you want to have 38 to 42, I think it is, lands in your deck to make sure you're not missing your land drops. So you don't have that problem Star Wars Universe or Star Wars Unlimited, because every card is a potential resource. But extrapolating from what I've played so far and from Constructed, you do want to have between 20 and 25 turn 1 plays. And that usually means being able to play a unit out at the start of the game, or some event that creates units. You want to be able to get that foothold, start doing some things at the start of the game. So, you know, if you're basically, that's a quarter of your deck is going to be turn 1 plays. So resource 1 or resource 2 cards. You do want to have some removal. As I stated before, there are very few, and they're not in all colors. Very few board wipes in this game, so spot removal becomes very important. There are now some cards, basically removal cards that are strictly better than earlier ones that were printed, which is the thing I think is going to be going on further into the future. So I think removal is always going to have its place. You're always going to have some. If you're playing more of a controlling deck, you're going to have more. But the meat and potatoes of playing Star Wars Unlimited is units, getting units in to do damage. So really you can't overdo it with removal. I don't think there's any hard and fast rule yet when it comes to how much removal you should have in your deck, but you need to have at least some. I'm thinking at this point maybe 3 to 5 spot removal cards. Combat and in quotes tricks. So unlike Magic, you can't declare an attack and then oops, or I'm going to play this card in response, or I'm going to play putting something on the stack to be able to buff up the ability of the creature that I'm attacking with, or making it unblockable, etc., etc. There really aren't tricks like that. However, there are events that, and even upgrades that allow you to upgrade and give it some extra power to punch through against your opponent, or allow you to attack with more than one unit at a time. These events, they're out there, and you need to be sort of prepared for them. You should probably have some of them in your deck as well, because sometimes you just want to push through damage. You don't want to have to wait until another turn to attack one at a time. Sometimes you want to do it with a lot. So there are cards like that that you play that causes another unit to attack on the turn and give them some kind of bonus for doing so. So you need to have a few of those in your deck just to make it a little more difficult for your opponents to predict what you're going to do. Because in this game, you can attack the base or you can attack units. There is no you don't choose how you block, unless of course you have a sentinel, but you're not choosing what your opponent attacks. They really don't have a choice if you only have one sentinel. They do have a choice if you have multiple sentinels, and then of course if they have saboteur, they can ignore it completely. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Base healing restore units are absolutely critical across this game, even if they're not necessarily on theme with what you're playing. That's how you basically, and again, there aren't very many straight up base healing cards in this game. There are, I believe, only 2. There are units that do it, and of course restore. It helps to heal your base. You do need to have some of these in your decks, no matter what theme you're playing. As I'll point out, when I get to the idea of what staples cards there are, or may be in the game going forward, there are a couple that I think you can, if you're in those particular colors, you can never ever be without, because that's how you're basically going to be more successful at the game, by keeping the health on your base high. Resource curve. So the bulk of your deck is going to be 3 to 5 resource cost cards. It's a very similar curve in a way to Magic, because you are not going to get a chance to play those really big haymaker, impactful, high resource cards in the game that goes this fast. So my suggestion is to keep them within that 3 to 5 resource range, but be careful of 8+ resource cards. As I said, as how I feel right now is the games don't really go beyond round 7 or 8. That may be changing, so we may have to revisit whether or not you want to have a lot of 8+ cards in your deck. It's still fun to have them. Some can be cheated out, so if you want to have them in your deck, then play them. A lot of the time they may just end up as resources, but if things come together and you're actually able to play ones where you can reduce the cost on them, then more power to you. I mean, that's part of the fun of the game, is learning what you can and cannot play and taking those big risks to try and get really effective turns or wins. So there are, and again, referencing Commander, there are a lot of staple cards. I mentioned some before. Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, etc. There, to my knowledge, that I've looked for, I don't know if anybody's put together, I mean, somebody probably has, I don't know, a list of color staples for this game. This is, so I put it together. I'm going to link it in, it's a public Google document. I'm going to link it in the description below. This is a very preliminary list. I took some time going through each color and each color pairing, seeing which cards I think are a really good starting point for each deck. So they fit in nearly any deck depending on what aspects you're in, of course. And the spreadsheet is broken down by those color combinations. So, for example, Vigilance, Vigilance Heroic, Vigilance Villainy all have their own pages in the spreadsheet. These are cards that have an immediate effect when played or otherwise very powerful. So you want, because the action economy in Star Wars Unlimited is very tight, you want to get the most out of playing your cards. Because you have one action generally on your turn, you want to have that to be as impactful as possible, or at least impactful in the future. So they make a good starting core to a deck that can be modified based on your collection or deck synergies. So in a lot of ways, when I was looking through the list, you could basically just make a 4-aspect deck and be around, basically based on the ones that are in the spreadsheet right now, fill that up immediately and just have to make some cuts. I mean, you could play more than 80 cards, but I feel like if you don't know where to start, if you're just starting out in the game, then you have access to the cards, and that's another thing that I should mention. You're not always going to have access to some of the legendaries or rares, but you can always modify it as you go forward when you find a better card to slot into that resource slot or resource cost tier. Yeah, I think that I personally feel that having looked through it, it is a good sort of solid core if you don't know what else to do when building it. You can always use that subtractive method, build out that deck first that way, take out the cards that don't really fit with your theme, put other cards in that do. So yeah, have a look at the Google Doc. Again, I will link it in the description. I would love to get some feedback on how people feel about this particular way of doing things. Oh, I should mention too that I've gone through it and I've started to basically any cell or any card that's in a green box, I think are 100% ones. The other ones are all relatively optional, are optional. If you have a better card that fits with your theme, or it's just a strictly better card, then yeah, for sure. Those ones can be swapped out, but the ones that I've highlighted in green are, I believe, the ones that need to go into almost every deck in those colors. They are that, I think, powerful and that important going forward. So it is a living document. I'll point that out. I will be making changes to it over time. I'll be revising it or looking over it every time that another set comes out. So some cards may be removed from it, some may not. So we'll see. It's it's in a raw form. So this is like, think of it not a version 1, but a version like 0.1, maybe a real early alpha version of it. So I have some sample decks that I want to show here. So, and this is just, it's a little difficult to display this way, but so this is one that I put together back in, okay, this is a revised version, I should say, of a deck that I put together when we were at the 50 card level. But when Jump to Lightspeed came out, we have a lot more options to work with all the pilots and extra ships. It's been pretty good. So this one I call Combined Imperial Forces. It's a combined tribal plus tokens deck. So factional, I should use my own terms, factional and experience. Plus some little things that I thought were synergistic to work in here. So we have Grand Moff Tarkin and Director Krennic. Tarkin allows you to put, so as a resource sink, you spend one, you put an experience unit on an Imperial unit. Almost everything in this deck, or that I could put in here, was Imperial. And Director Krennic, each damaged unit gets +1. And we're playing in red, which has access to a bunch of terrific Imperial cards. And I wanted to play this one on theme, so you have like this group here. So you have your 3 admirals, you have your generals, colonels, directors. This version of Krennic here, for example, is just a great inclusion because he is Imperial. He's a 2/2 for 2, comes in shielded, and the next card or the first unit you play each round that has a when defeated ability costs 1 less. There are a lot of them, not a ton, but it's nicely synergistic. We got some great new pilots to work with, some fantastic. Captain Tarkin here, he's not Imperial, but I mean, he's on theme. He's actually a Republic character from the Clone Wars at that point, but just way too synergistic with this to give a little boost to vehicles, of which there are many more now because of the last set. For example, Victor Leader works very well with this Imperial theme, so each friendly space unit gets +1/+1. And then if you're lucky enough to stack that with good old General Veers from set 1, so each Imperial unit gets +1/+1. We have a lot more officials now, so we've got Emperor's Royal Guard as a good sentinel. Just some fantastic additions. Cards that work well with the counters. You've got Gideon Hask here, so when an enemy unit is defeated, give an experience token to a friendly unit. I mean, and he's great because you're playing in a 4-player game, so enemy units will be defeated all the time, and there's no limit to how many times you can do it. He can even place it on himself. We have some really fun cards that came out. So you've got Darth Vader as a pilot, you've got Planetary Bombardment. Now, I will point out, not everybody is going to have these cards. Things like Super Laser Blast from set 1, Darth Vader from set 1 are very difficult to get. I will say that because this is a casual format, I would have absolutely no issue with anybody, proxying these cards when you want to play. But by all means, but you don't really need to get them. The vast majority of cards are going. I mean, this one's a little more expensive because there are a lot of not rares, but even rares aren't that. Most rares aren't that expensive in Star Wars Unlimited. I mean, I did include, just for fun, really, and I know what I said about not having anything over 8 resources. But the Devastator and the Executor or Executor here were just sort of too fun to not include, because there is ramp in this particular deck. So the resupply carrier is a recent sort of late game ramp, and of course we have resupply, which is something you're going to put into pretty much every green deck anyway, and the super laser tech, because you're pretty much always going to have them in an Imperial Command deck, for sure. So there is an outside chance there, if you're able to ramp into them, that you're able to get these. So I even put in a tutor for this deck, I think. Search Your Feelings. Yeah, there it is. Search Your Feelings is the only. There aren't that many tutors There are a few, but they're usually limited to search the top X number of cards of your deck. Yeah, this is very good. So that's the first one, but and again, this is going to be a little more expensive to put together if you didn't, get into the game from the start or you don't have access to the cards. The other one, so I had given, and shout out to my friend Rob on this one. He had, I didn't create it. This is just under my account. I will provide the link to these two decks in the description below as well if you want to have a look at them. They're on my Star Wars Unlimited database page. So this one, although some modifications, of course, because wanted to get it up to 80. I think it was originally built when it was only at 50. This was made up of basically cards that I had just passed on to him or on to another friend. You'll note that it is largely Republic oriented, so Clone Wars era stuff. And because I had so many at that time that I hadn't already given away from set 3, and I've played. I should mention the previous deck. I had played with I played with it twice, and both times I won with it. Not that that is necessary. I mean, again, the goal is to win, but the point is to have fun, just like any game. In this particular case, these decks were highly effective. So this one that he named Super Trooper. Again, with some modifications, just for newer cards and to fill out the deck itself. Extremely effective. Won twice in a row, and it's mostly made up of commons and uncommons and cast-offs. It just has all clone synergy. I mean, these work very well together. It's very thematic as well. It's got some good little bits of spot removal, so it's got some very potent cards. Again, almost entirely, except for a couple of things that I added in, commons and uncommons. So as I said, if you happen to go to a game night for Star Wars and you're new to it, you could basically, as I said, I have no problem giving away a bunch of extras of the cards that I have. This deck was extremely effective, and again, I only added in a couple of things. He just had an almost constant board presence because this was churning out a lot of tokens or very hard to remove clones. It was synergistic, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. I think it's still a little, it got a bit stronger in the space arena. And that's another thing now to consider in early versions, early environments of Star Wars Unlimited. Space was sort of weak, but it's really been buffed up quite a bit when it comes to Jump to Lightspeed being a ship-centered expansion. So this could be heavily modified even for this environment because there were some new Republic ships and Republic pilots out there. But from my experience, having been beaten by this particular deck twice, it's very effective. And I think when it was on, there's another site that this was originally uploaded to, it was about like $16 if you wanted to buy it, but I'm telling you right now, more than likely this deck could be built for free if you have the right contacts. So, where are we at with the game? So I call this one A New Hope. I really am looking forward to where Twin Suns goes as a format. As the card pool itself grows, so too will the diversity of the decks that are out there. The staples list is going to grow, but older cards may fall out of favor. I mentioned that when I was going over the staples list. Premier rotation will make older cards more available. So For those not familiar with how the game is, they are going to be doing rotation. The rotation comes in March of every year, so they're being fairly cutthroat with what's in the Premier, otherwise known in Magic as the standard environment. Premier is going to it's going to rotate out every March. So that means that more than likely, although of course reprints or changes to formats are not completely out of the question because that's the way that every card game goes. Premier is always going to be the primary way people will be engaging with the game on a competitive or constructed level. There is always a chance that older cards, people will sell off those portions of the collections, and those cards will be easier to find. So, for example, I would love to make a Jedi deck and have original, like, set 1 Luke Skywalker in it, because it makes a lot of sense. Problem is, I'm personally not going to pay $40 to $50 or $60 to be able to play that one card. Again, proxying, if you want to proxy, go right ahead. I tend to try not to do that, not with this game. But there's a good possibility in the future that harder to get cards you'll be able to get in the future. And they'll be, if you really want them, they will be less expensive. At least that's what I'm hoping. We'll see what happens. We're still a year off from that happening. I would really like to see Fantasy Flight push this format. I know they were with the accessories and showing it off on their channel and so on. But I'm coming at this from a person who loves to play limited formats. Like, I love draft. I do draft pretty much every week until I burn out doing that in each environment or draft environment with every release. But I do enjoy occasional constructed. I'm not the most competitive player that way, but I really like multiplayer formats, the social aspect of them. It is extremely fun when people engage with it. I really hope that Fantasy Flight pushes this format a little harder than it has been even maybe with official events. I know they're probably going to have side events at the Galactic Championship in Vegas this year, and that's terrific, but I think maybe highlighting this as a format with like actually pushing it. I know they do it on their channel, but I'd like to see a little more attention paid to it going forward. So worth checking out. So at the start of the video, I did just a quick introduction of what the format is. I wasn't going to go into like real depths over what to do or how to play the game. But I really wish I had the kind of setup to actually record games of this and provide it for everybody to watch. But, well, I don't. So I'm hoping maybe in the future people work out some way to do it with like Spell Table, for example, how they do that with Magic. So perhaps in the future we'll get to that point. Actually, there's no reason why you couldn't use Spell Table to play this game now that I think about it. Well, anyway, we'll see. So worth checking out, and I will link to their channels below. So there are two Twin Suns centric channels out there that I enjoy. Very different levels of energy between the two of them. So Take the Blast is one. They actually had a really good intro video on how to play Twin Suns in general. Like a kind of an in-depth guide that I didn't really go into in this one. It is worth checking out on their channel. And they have some pretty fun games of Twin Suns on there. And the Bucketheads, very high production value with these guys. Very different energy. Speaking as an older person, it's got real Gen Z energy. Let's just put it that way. But I admire what they're doing, and they've had some pretty fun games on their channel so far. So worth checking out. I'll link to them in the description. So what's next? I do want to continue doing some Twin Suns content. I really enjoy it. I want to do some deck builds and techs. Haven't decided whether or not I'm going to do those live. I might at some point. I think that might be kind of fun to get people's feedback. I always have some ideas percolating about what kind of decks I might want to play in this format. Viewer suggestions. I would love to hear from the viewers as to what kind of decks they are playing or what kind of cards they see as having great synergies, way to incorporate those into decks. I would love to get that kind of feedback. And of course, as we go forward, I'm going to be updating the staples list. And I would love to, as I said before, I would love to get some feedback from people as to what you think are absolutely staple cards. Either ones that are strictly better than other cards in the same colors when you have access to them, what good replacements there are, and of course the ones that are absolutely like not just staples but core staples of the set. I look forward to getting that kind of feedback. So please, as usual, if you like the video, if you I'll do the usual algorithmic demanding things, please. But also, please comment, give me some ideas about what you'd like to see, either for what I suggested here, or where I go forward with making some Twin Suns content. So that's it, and thanks for watching. Until next time, happy gaming. Thank you so much for watching Longship Gaming. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It will really help the channel to grow and improve. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when more Longship Gaming content goes live. Until next time, happy gaming.